Okay, all set.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm calling this meeting of the Green Bank Board of Directors to order on Friday, March 21st at 9:01 a.m. Happy spring, everybody. Let's see. So I'd say the first is public comments. Do I hear any public comments? Hearing none. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Brian, did you want to talk about that?
Yes, we have several items requiring resolutions 1 and 2. The first one being the meeting minutes from our regularly scheduled meeting on January 24th, and then our special meetings held on January 29th and February 19th. And then we have an extension of a timeline for our Danbury CPACE project, so that's resolutions 1 and 2. And then within the materials for the board, we left the under 500,000 and no more in aggregate than $1 million staff approved transaction memo. So we had 3 transactions there, CPACE transactions, one in Cheshire, Middletown, and Niantic. We also included, just as an update, the under 100,000 and no more in aggregate than $500,000 staff approved transaction restructurings and write-offs. We had no transactions written off or restructured during this period. We also included the abridged and comprehensive financial report for Q2 of FY25. And we included a great set of fact sheets that Sarah Harari and our team was working on with our partners at the Department of Revenue Services, Department of Economic and Community Development, and Department of Energy and Environmental Protection concerning the clean energy tax credits. So that is the consent agenda, looking to move resolutions 1 and 2.
Okay, do I hear any questions or concerns or? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion. It's Joe.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second, right?
Sure, that'll be my second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Good. Okay, let's see, moving on to item 4, an update on the legislative process. So that'll be James and Brian Farn.
Thanks, Chair Reed. Good morning, everyone. James Santos, Legislative Liaison for the Green Bank. Just going to walk you through 4 slides here of where we are in the legislative session. So we are about a third of the way through, convened on January 8th and adjourns on June 4th. So far, the session by the numbers, which are interesting stats here, but there's been a little over 2,000 bills that were introduced this legislative session. Those are both proposed bills and bills that were introduced by committees. Green Bank is currently tracking 321 of those. And of those, nine pieces of legislation we submitted written testimony on for the public hearing process. And then there was 1 piece of legislation, which was Governor Lamont's resilience bill, where Brian Garcia, Bert Hunter, and Lee Welton all testified live in person for that. Even though there's only 10 bills that we submitted or spoke during the public hearing process, we're probably involved in, I'd say, 20 to 30 bills right now in the beginning of the negotiation phase. Everything truly right now is a work in progress. And that's how I was able to consolidate those 2,000 bills into 3 slides for you today. So here's where we are in terms of the process. So the bill introduction and the bill screening is completed. Public hearing process is wrapping up. You have a couple of committees that stretch into April, GAE, Public Health, and then you have the referral committees, Judiciary, Probes, Finance. That's wrapping up now. The committee process has already concluded for the Energy and Technology Committee. It concluded on 3/20. They held their last meeting on 3/18, and Environment is at the end of this month. So where we are now is we are in the file copy phase. So that's when everything gets JFS, and then negotiations begin. And sessions begin to be called as soon as March Madness ends in the House. So what's driving the what's driving the discussion? In 2025, in terms of energy and the environment, is really the high electric rates, right? So you've seen the discussion since the last summer with Millstone and the COVID moratorium and how that spiked the public benefits. You've seen the Senate Democrats counter with their omnibus bill, their aircraft carrier, which is Senate Bill 4. So that is a very heated battle, has been since the beginning of session and will continue. The other is last year, there was Public Act 2431 passed. That requires PURA to do a study on renewable energy tariffs and make recommendations for successor programs. So they actually just opened the docket for participant status a couple weeks ago. We filed our motion a few days ago, so the Green Bank will be a participant in that docket moving forward. So because of that, all solar-related expansion or successor programs are being kicked until the 2026 session. And Brian Farnan's also on the call if he wants to comment on anything on this slide.
No, this is that was a great that was great, James.
Okay. So here's just two bills I wanted to highlight. I know I referenced this on the previous slide, but Senate Bill 647 is the Republican caucus bill. The stated purpose of it is important for everyone to hear. It's, to reduce energy costs and increase energy supply, right? So this is the caucus bill from the House and Senate Republicans. They all signed on. There's probably about, 40, 50 co-sponsors to this one right now. It's about 15 sections. I've only pulled out 2 to highlight for you today. Sections 1 to 3 moves all the programs funded by the public benefit charge from electric bills and moves it to the state budget. It's being touted as a way for public transparency and a way to audit it and negotiate it on a biannual basis. That would sweep the conservation and load management, ESS, everything that's funded by the public benefit charge and throw it onto the state budget. Now, what that does is that subjects it to the spending cap. That subjects it to budget sweeps. That makes it so those programs now need to compete with everything else that's in the state budget. But most importantly, what it does is it allows for a line item veto from the governor. So these programs were created over 25 years since DREG. They've gone through the House, the Senate, signed by the governor, sent to PURA, gone through the process, and they could be eliminated by a swipe of a governor's pen, right? So that's very, very scary thought to think about. Section 4 very clearly eliminated the Clean Energy Fund after July 1 of 2025. I probably should have started talking about this bill in the beginning by saying that this bill is no longer alive at this point, before I scare everyone. But the energy and technology committee chose not to have this bill even added to an agenda to vote on, right? So it was introduced for public hearing in the spirit of bipartisanship, went through the public hearing process. Republicans made a motion to try to have it added to an agenda. The motion failed and the bill is dead now. But it did have a public hearing. It is a priority of the Republican caucus. So the language is always alive. So we need to be vigilant on track and amendment language for this thing throughout the rest of the session. Senate Bill 4 on a very high level, there's probably about 12 sections of this one. The ones that are relevant to the Green Bank in any way is, sections 1 to 4. I mean, it's really a nuclear-based piece of legislation. We are in our statute, we are not able to make investments in nuclear fission. So all of the language pertains to DEEP specifically in sections 1 to 4. Section 7 does speak to the Green Bank. PURA, it requires PURA to open a docket on a utility scale thermal energy network program. And Green Bank is to be a part of that working group with DEEP, gas electric companies, and environmental organizations. This is the Green Monster. It was the exact same bill number last year. Failed to, I believe it passed the House, failed to get called in the Senate. The bill is pretty much along the same lines as last year. Same amount of study, same amount of task force. What is relevant is to the Green Bank is Section 7(8) is it revitalizes the Connecticut Clean Economy Council. Green Bank has a seat on that council. Nature-based solutions. Green Bank is going to be a part of that strategic plan. Very interested Pure to develop a solar canopy strategic plan by January, which will probably be part of the Pure docket that they're going to be releasing anyways. And then it's the same language in Senate Bill 4, Green Bank being a part of the Renewable Thermal Energy Network Work Group. So I think we can go on to the next slide, Brian. So then here's the big bill that we've been working on this session. This is Governor Lamont's flagship resilience bill. Initially, it started out as 1245. The Senate introduced Senate Bill 9 beginning of session. Since then, the Environment Committee has opted to move forward with Senate Bill 9. The language is identical to 1245, except they added in two bills, use of neonicotinoids and second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. So those two issues each have their own individual bills that are moving through the process. They are being negotiated. Once that language is agreed to by everyone, it'll be added to Senate Bill 9 as a strike all amendment with those things incorporated. So it did have a public hearing on March 3rd or March 4th. Brian Garcia, Burr Hunter, and Lee Welton all testified in person, specifically on two areas, sections 18 to 20, which was the transfer of development rights, and then sections 24 to 33, which deals with the resiliency improvement districts, which mirrors essentially tax incremental financing. The key part of that is the definition of increased savings. So the goal of this program is to allow communities within an area to incorporate resilience measures. And the resilience measures for that community will be paid for by bonds that are issued by the members of that district. And then the bonds are repaid by the decreased premiums on insurance, right? So that delta will go to repay the bonds that are issued by the resilience district. I think that's all I have for that one. Brian, do you want to any comments on that before we open up the questions? And I would encourage anyone if they have any questions at all on a piece of legislation. I know it's only 4 slides and 2,000 pieces of legislation were introduced. So just please give me a call. Happy to walk you through everything.
No, I have nothing to add. James has been great. I think we really kind of upped our game with getting him on board. And, this is a long session, so there's always many more things that get thrown at you. But we feel like we're, well positioned. From our perspective, getting the resiliency bill passed will be very important. I think that's where probably our main priority is. And when it comes to the public benefit charge issue, the reality is the public benefit charge that the Connecticut Green Bank has actually been shrinking over time. Well, I believe the overall public benefit charge has increased. So we get kind of caught in the crosshairs of that. But the reality is the public funding ratepayer dollars that we get is less and less. And we're doing more and more.
Yeah, Brian, it's Tom Flynn. Can I jump in on what you're just saying? I think that's fantastic. And actually, it goes to a comment that I was going to have. And this may be unpopular. I don't know. But I've been fighting for a long time, or advocating for a long time, that we act more like a bank and less kind of a governmental agency. You guys know that in my comments on compensation and the like. And I think you're exactly right. The politics regarding the public benefit charge and the like is what's driving them really questioning the funding here. And I think the quicker we can develop a plan to eliminate our need for that funding, or to continue to dramatically reduce that and continue to do our mission based on the earnings we get from the deals that we make, I think that further insulates us from these kind of political issues that come up and these budgetary pressures that come up. So I think that should really continue to be kind of a priority. And just to make sure I'm consistent, I served that for years on the board of the Beardsley Zoo in Bridgeport, and I advocated for the same thing because every year they would have to beg and plead and try to get funds from the city of Bridgeport in order to operate, when I think they should have been standalone. And I think the quicker we can push towards that, I think it'd be fantastic. And then, of course, if the state wants us to take on specific programs or the like, we could put together a thesis on how much that is going to cost, or a proposal, and say, hey, if you would like us to do this, you're going to have to give us the funds for this specific program, something of that like that. That's my mindset when I listen to all this anyway.
Thanks, Tom. And I
This,
think, oh, go ahead.
this is
Go ahead, Lon.
Lonnie. I just want to say, I helped bring that millstone bill to the floor, and this public benefits talking about millstone is a total misnomer. That was a supply issue. They were going to close the 2 plants they have left, and because that had been happening all over the country. That's 55% of our electricity. And why that keeps being talked as a public benefit, the reality was, then number one, they were done with Connecticut. The CEO was, fed up with us, and felt that they weren't getting a fair hearing. And of course, we wanted them to redo their plant, modernize it, and because it should have shut down years ago. They were originally commissioned to only be open for 30 years. Connecticut Yankee closed down because of that. So they had to kind of really rebuild it and ensure that it was environmentally safe, but also 55% of our electricity. So every time I hear it, oh, that's a public benefits, are you kidding me? The public benefit is turning on the lights. So some of the misnomers, I think, just going forward, because the stuff is going to come back, it'd be good to argue that this is a supply issue.
Yeah, I think that's based on where it's based on your bill, right, Lonnie? I mean,
Yeah. Oh,
you're
yeah.
arguing-
Right. Yeah.
Right. And shame on them for allowing it to be put under the public benefit, because
Exactly.
I choke every time I get my electric bill and I see that egregious public benefit charge on there, right? And I'm not looking into it. I just see it as a higher percentage of my bill than it used to be. And that's what's driving it, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think, let's, at least behind the scenes, let's kind of have that discussion and reorganize that, because that's giving false information. And,
Yeah.
where would New England be without Millstone, quite frankly?
Yeah, Lonnie, if I think this is a good topic for another day, but just to counterbalance, Tom, I would take the opposite position respectfully on that. I think we should plan to not have that money. We should always be in a position, but we make good use of it. And having been around when it was the restructuring bill was done, these were activities that were formally part of the regulatory bargain with the utilities. And when everything got unwound, the home was the public benefit charge, but it never anticipated, as Lonnie's saying, costs like the millstone costs being put in there. So I would suggest that we think about having a robust education campaign, especially at the legislature, to explain some of the unpacking of this. But the bottom line is it's still always going to be lumped together, because we're not going to change that. So I think we need to try to educate people on it. And the millstone, the whole millstone thing, it was compounded by what Pura did with the very limited time for the payback. So there were errors, I would say errors or miscalculations and then missteps in many places, and that's led to this focus on that public benefits charge. But the initial reason for it and the slice of it that we get, I think, is put to good use and shouldn't be subject to the whims of the budget. But we also should be prepared to lose it, because like you're saying, Tom, we need to make sure we're not hamstrung if we do lose it.
Yeah, Matt, I don't think we're that far apart in our thinking. That's kind of exactly what I'm saying. If we get it, I think you're right. We put it to good use, probably better use than anybody else. What I want to do is not be dependent upon getting it, right? So if we get it, it's something that we can put to good use, but I don't think we should depend on it. and count on it all the time. That's my point.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, any other
This is-
comments?
Oh, yeah, this
Yeah.
is Dominic. Just,
Oh, yeah, go Dominic.
what is the percentage right now for this current year of that source of funding as a percentage of the total Green Bank budget?
65. Probably, Jane, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, probably about 35, 40%. So the system benefit charge, the Clean Energy Fund is about $25 million of our public revenues. We have more earned revenues today than we did in 2017. So on the public revenue side, we've got the Clean Energy Fund, 25 million. We've got Reggie allowance proceeds at about 5 million. So 30 million overall on the public revenue side. On the earned revenue side, we're probably 35, $40 million of earned revenues on top of the public. So it's definitely moving in the right direction in terms of more earned revenues. So we've, to the discussion that's happening here of becoming more resilient in the event that you lose it, this was our strategy back from 2017, where we are now generating more earned revenues.
And Brian,
Great,
correct me if I'm
thanks.
wrong, we're still subject to being swept. I mean,
Yeah.
like 2017, and there was a
And that's
lawsuit arguing that this dedicated funding source should have protected it from being swept, and I think that did not end favorably for us.
Right. I still grab in. That's right.
I just had a comment about having Millstone under the public benefit charge, because the public benefit charge is paid by everybody regardless of your source of electricity. So if you generate all of your electricity at your own home, and you don't take anything off of the grid, you're still charged the public benefit charge, and the fact that it's a bigger and bigger chunk of the bill actually kind of discourages people in a way from going to solar and other independent generation means. And you shouldn't be paying for generation if you're off of the grid, basically. And the other comment I would make is that if we'd gone ahead with the wind program, that would have essentially replaced one of the Millstone reactors. So like in 2017, when Millstone was saying they needed more money, part of what they said was, what's your alternative? And we did not have one, but wind would have been one if we had pursued it. I know people feel it was expensive, but wind would have come down in cost over time, but Millstone, it seems like, is just it's just escalating their prices instead. So I think that there's a lot of mistakes made in there, in my opinion. Thanks.
Any more comments or questions?
Maybe one more comment just as we move beyond 647. But just a comment on SB 9 supporting the governor's bill. So I just want to give a big praise to Joanna, who's working really, really hard to bring all the stakeholders to the table, thinking about that bill, because we really need to be increasing private investment in helping families and businesses increase their resilience, just given the uncertainty of what climate is doing, across our state. And on January 21st, when the governor had his press conference, there were a couple of things that were acknowledged. One was the across government leadership that the governor was leaning on. So you had Commissioner Mays from Insurance, Commissioner Dykes leading the way from Energy and Environment, Commissioner Caffarelli from Consumer Protection, the Green Bank, Yukon. So there was a recognition that resilience required all hands on deck. The second thing that came from that press release was the market looking at what the governor was doing. So it was within weeks that the bond buyer covered that press event and said that, you know, communities and states across the country should be looking at resilience improvement districts because this is a way to unlock municipal financing in resilience, and that if bills like this were to move forward, they would serve as an example to raising the trillions of dollars needed to defend ourselves against climate. So again, you know, Connecticut, we're small. We've got lots of great ideas. In this case, we've got an insurance industry. We've got our insurance capital. You know, SB 9's passage will unlock, we think, lots of local investment in resilience, environmental infrastructure, clean energy. So it's definitely a foundational policy that could help move investment.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Speaking of investment, moving on to item 5, I'm talking about investment program updates and recommendations and Total Energies. Is that Bird and Mariana?
Yes. Good morning.
Got it.
I'm happy to take this one. So yes, switching gears into investments and what we do. This first transaction that we're bringing forward by way of background is associated with the first portfolio of solar projects that we developed with the state of Connecticut as a counterparty. They are all ground mount projects behind the meter, and the portfolio is with the Department of Corrections. Both the installer and the long-term owner were chosen through a competitive RFP. That is, originally the installer was chosen as SunPower, who were later acquired by Total Energies. And as I think we shared with the board back in May of 2023, they were also the winning bid under a competitive RFP to be the long-term owner. Those projects were sold to Total last year, and we are now coming to the board as sort of previously anticipated to seek approval for term debt associated with these projects. But before I move forward, wanted to share a couple of pictures of the projects. All of them have reached commercial operations. It is a total of 8.3 megawatts DC of ground mount projects, and expecting to save Department of Corrections over $12 million over the 25-year term. If I could please take a look at the next slide. This is 2 of the sort of 3 campus-style sites. These are Google Earth pictures. I don't have the third site in here just because it hasn't updated with the panels, but you can see, especially on the left, the Cheshire campus has solar in sort of 3 different sections, and there's two different meters and buildings that are benefiting from solar. So going on to the next slide, please. When we had initially come to the board with approval for both the sale of the projects and debt back in 2023, Total and our debt was structured considering a couple of different tax equity monetization strategies, such as ITC transfer and tax equity. However, there was a key change in Total late last year around December, where instead of transferring the ITCs or seeking a tax equity partner, Total Energies will be directly monetizing the tax credits themselves on the federal tax returns. So therefore, we are seeking approval for an updated structure to the debt facility that reflects this new approach. The structure is sort of a typical project level debt financing, or what's called front levered. It is consistent with other green bank transactions. We've funded under a similar debt transaction, for example, debt structure with Skyview, and the terms which are presented here align with those that were offered to all bidders in that RFP that we did when we selected the long-term owner, where debt was made available to all bidders, and they were shared with the board back in 2023. So again, the main change here has not been any of the sort of high level terms in terms of interest rate, debt service coverage ratio, or term of the loan. It really has been in terms of the structure, where the debt, instead of being back levered, is front levered, and it's project level debt financing, and the security acts a little bit different given that there's no tax equity partner. And again, repayment of the loan will come from the cash flows associated to the 7 solar projects with the state. So they have both a PPA with the state, and for the majority of the projects, a ZREC for the sale of the RECs. There's only one site that is under the new NRS tariff. So I'll stop there in case there are any questions. Otherwise, our recommendation is to seek approval for this new structure of debt financing for Total Energies.
Does anybody have any questions or observations?
Lonnie, it's Matt. I'm just going to recuse myself from this. Total's a client on other matters, not on these projects.
You're a good man. Not everybody is these days seems to be into the conflict of interest awareness. So good for you. Thank you.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. So do I hear a motion to approve resolution 3?
Joanna, I'll move.
Thank you, Joanna.
Second, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Any other extensions besides Matt? Okay, great. Moving on.
Yeah, the next is a shared clean energy facility project in the town of Ellington.
Okie doke.
5B. If it's okay with you, Chair Reed, I'll hand the mic over to David Beach.
Oh, that's great. Okay, David. I thought I had written David's name down. Okay, David Beach. Absolutely.
There you go.
Thank you, Bert, and thank you,
David,
Chair Reed.
over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, as Bert mentioned, I'm excited to speak to you today about the Green Bank's participation in financing for SCEF project in Ellington. For those that don't know, SCEF stands for Shared Clean Energy Facilities. So some high-level key project metrics here. It's a 5.8 megawatt DC project expected to produce more than 8,500 megawatt hours in the first year. It's a ground mount project. The SCEF award was received in 2022. That's the third year of the Eversource SCEF auction. I want to highlight here that 2022 is a bit of an unfortunate time to bid into a competitive solicitation for solar pricing, because shortly after these competitive bids went in, interest rates increased substantially in a short period of time, and inflation was also high at that point as well. So there have been other developers who received awards in the same year that have decided that the project economics are no longer feasible, and they are pursuing rebidding in their projects. But we are excited to be moving forward with this project, and it is in no small part that the support of the Green Bank is helping this project move forward and complete construction in a timely manner. So that's just something I wanted to highlight. So the SCEF program offers subscriber benefits. It's 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour to subscribers. And the really great thing about this project is with the Green Bank investment, for every $1, we're going to be unlocking roughly 50 cents worth of value and savings going to low and moderate income households over the life of the 20-year SCEF project. And 17 cents for every $1 is going to go to Connecticut small businesses. Another way of looking at this is more than 500 low and moderate income families are expected to receive more than $200 a year in subscriber benefits. So some really cool alignment with our vulnerable communities goals for this project. Our key partners here are the developer, Community Power Group. They've had significant experience developing community and utility scale solar projects. They finished over 200 megawatts and have even more than that in their current pipeline. And our EPC contractor is CTEC Solar, a group that the Green Bank has a lot of experience with. We've developed almost 10 projects with them previously. They recently actually won one of those competitive solicitations to do a state ground-mounted solar project, similar to the ones that Mariana just presented. And since 2021, they've also been the Green Bank's operations and maintenance provider for our commercial solar portfolio. So the Green Bank has a lot of comfort working with CTEC, and that's something that gave us a lot of confidence as we went to pursue this transaction. So with that, I'll hit on the next slide and talk a little bit about the financing structures here. So we're proposing both a construction and term loan. With the construction loan, we're going to maximum go up to 60% of project's costs. Interest is paid quarterly, and we do require a 3-month debt service reserve. We also receive a closing fee and charge a commitment fee to ensure timely construction. For the term loan, we have sized that based on a 1.35 debt service coverage ratio. And for the term loan, we require a 6-month debt service reserve. The term loan comes with a fixed interest rate in an 18-year term. That gives us a 2-year tail at the end of the SCEF tariff as a little bit of extra security. And it is, in many ways, the value of being able to offer a longer-term fixed interest rate contract that is helping this project move forward. For the tax credit monetization, so Community Power Group, the developer, is actually, usually they are selling projects to others, but this time they have decided to own and operate the system themselves and take advantage of their own tax liability to monetize the tax credit. So they will be both, in essence, the tax equity provider, but also a regular equity provider. So you can see on the right, the borrower will just be a special purpose entity owned by Community Power Group. And instead of having a separate tax equity entity, it's really just Community Power Group and the Green Bank investing in this project. So that's an overview of the debt facilities. I just have one more slide here. I wanted to highlight another item. So this project is on prime farmland. And if you can see that quote there on the left side from our Green Bank Agriculture Primer, we have said previously that it is important to not only protect marginal farmlands, but to specifically protect prime farmland. So in doing our diligence for this project, we wanted to dig a little deeper here because we have, stated this, and it is important for us to protect prime farmland. And something that was able to get us comfortable was when we looked at the siting council proceedings. Both DEEP and the Department of Agriculture submitted testimony in support. And the Department of Agriculture actually provided a letter in which they spoke about some of the co-uses that the developer had agreed to implement at the site. Those include apiaries for pollinator research. For those that don't know, I didn't know either. Apiaries just means beehives. And they also agreed to open up the site for sheep pasture rotation and grazing, and have worked with a Connecticut-based vegetable grower to use approximately 10,000 square feet to grow crops. And at the end of the Department of Agriculture letter, they said if these co-uses are implemented as expected, that would result in the project not materially affecting the status of the project land as prime farmland. And so that is something that gave us confidence, knowing that we have a good co-uses of this land with the solar. And in our loan documentation, we're going to just include a requirement to ensure that these co-uses are actually implemented for the life of the project. So wanted to highlight that as well, as there's kind of a commingling of Green Bank priorities here. That is it for my portion of the presentation, but I will pass it back to Chair Reed, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or observations?
Hey, David,
Yeah,
it's Matt,
this is-
sorry.
oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is Dominic. Just a question on that last point. So for the sheep under the panels, or some of these ag uses, is that when you said it's going to be like a requirement of the loan? How's that going to be documented in terms of, are you requiring vegetative management to be done by livestock, or is that up to the solar project owner at that point, or how's that kind of getting managed?
Yeah, we haven't firmly decided on the proper way to document it. I think that will come a little bit into the legal work and the loan documentation. I think our primary focus is ensuring that there are these co-uses being done that's preserving the land as prime farmland. If for whatever reason, right, there's something happens where, the vegetable grower is no longer available, we want to make sure that something else happens. So I think there's a desire to not necessarily be too rigid, but make sure that these co-uses, in whatever shape they come in, are being implemented. But I don't have any specifics on how we plan to document it. I think that's something that still needs probably some work and will happen in the documentation legal process.
Yeah, well, I do want to let me chime in here. It's Bert Hunter. It's likely to be in the form of a covenant loan agreement, but we haven't. This is our first time at bat on these kinds of structures, and so we're going to make sure that we review the requirements that the project sponsor has signed up for with DOAG and the Siting Council. And Lee Welton, I see you came on.
Yeah, I see that. I see her hand up. I'm waiting to hear from her.
So why don't you weigh in here as our resident specialist on some of these things?
Well, I can't speak to the loan covenant better than Bert. I'll just caveat, because the Department of Agriculture's determination about the material impacts, or rather the lack of material impact to the prime farmland, is conditional upon the co-uses. We wanted, however, Bert and David figure to structure the loan covenant, we wanted it to reflect that, such that we're never, out of step with DOAG in terms of the overall project impact.
Great, that's helpful. Yeah, I appreciate the thought being put into that. I think it's, given the sensitivities around dual use and prime farmland, it's important to make sure that a couple years down the road, it's not sort of forgotten. Yeah, precisely. That's why we want to be careful in terms of how we ask the board for its permission here. We want to make sure that we make clear to you that we're going to hold them to this requirement. It's just that we don't know exactly what we will need and exactly how it's going to be documented, but we expect it to be in the form of a loan covenant that will have teeth in it to make sure that the performance is assured. Great.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions, observations?
Yeah, I do have a question. Adrian speaking.
Oh, yes. Oh, hey, Adrian. Oh, good. Yes,
yeah, I
please.
wanted to know about the siting for SCEF. Apparently, if you go back to the slide before, there is a benefit of $200 that I saw somewhere. Maybe it's not that one.
One more.
Anyway, yeah, there we go. More than 500 LMI families are expected to receive $200 per year. So my question really is about how the siting is determined, because are we expected to be able to use this SCEF system to reduce the energy burden of LMI families? If so, how do we integrate that into the choice of site? Because obviously we have tech considerations as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably more of a question for someone who's a bit more of an expert on the SCEF program. I don't think there's specific citing requirements that I know of, other than just being able to bid into the program. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm answering very well.
Yeah, I think the site location of the SCEF doesn't bear any relationship to the beneficiaries under the program. Yeah, those beneficiaries are managed by the utility. That's my understanding of how the program works. So
that's right.
Yeah,
so
let me take.
Go ahead.
Let me take a stab at describing SCEF to the best I can. So there are two components of it, Adrian. One is a bilateral agreement between a developer and the utilities. So what we're seeing here is the developer CPG and the utilities engaging in a contract for 8.8 cents. I forgot what the number was per kilowatt hour over a 20-year period. So that bilateral arrangement supports the project developer moving forward with developing that 5.8 megawatt project. Separate from that, the kilowatt hours that are produced from that system create subscriber benefits. The legislation underneath SCEF, and Joe, you could probably help me out here too, really emphasizes the importance of the distribution of those subscriber benefits to go to, first, low-income families, less than 60% area median income. Then second, low to moderate income families and small nonprofits and businesses that serve, the low-income sector. So there's some 60% of the subscriber credits that go towards those LMI families. The way this works in practice is the utilities run a lottery system and randomly select LMI families to receive the subscriber benefit. So it will effectively, for those who are selected, will show up as a credit on their bill for the next 20 years, right? So that is the $200+ number. There you go at the bottom there that David was referring to. So there's two separate things going on here. There's a project developer trying to do a project. And then on the other end is sharing the benefits of that project with the low to moderate income families and businesses on the subscriber credit. That's
a lottery that chooses them.
That's right.
Okay.
That's
so
right.
They can be anywhere in the state.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add, Adrian, is to that point. I think you're asking about the community benefits with respect to the location of the facility. Those beneficiaries do not need to be in the same community as the project is located. So there isn't a physical nexus between the two.
Right. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Joe DiNicolo, if I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I did. I have.
Okay, good.
Excuse me. Just going back to the previous comments on DOAG, I'm curious with these SCEF projects, and I should know this, but I don't. Do they also have some end of life obligation to remove facilities? Does that go along? Because I know DOAG that's usually the requirement they place on grid scale projects. Is there something comparable for with these SCEF projects?
Yes, and I saw my colleague Lee nodding along. So I'll let her jump in if she wants to add anything.
Yeah, I don't immediately between the Siting Council petition and the DOAG letter of support. I can't exactly in the moment jump to that part, but based on our findings in the diligence process, at the useful life of the project, the decommissioning would include return to prime farmland.
Okay, perfect. And so that might be another consideration for our covenants as well.
And Joe, I think that's statutorily required now too, the decommissioning part.
Yeah, totally.
For Siting Council to impose it.
Yes.
All right. Good to know. Thank you.
Any more questions? Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 4?
Joe, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Joe. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. So moving on to item C under this, let's see, we're talking about a facility for involving Capital for Change, which is our largest community development financial institution for the low income multifamily energy loan program. And so it's requested an extra extension of the availability of the facility. And Bert, did you want to take this one?
Yes, I'll manage this one. Thank you, Chair Reed. This is actually the original facility for the low-income multifamily energy loan program. Goes back to 2015, and it's been expanded over the years as it's gained in its popularity. There have been over 30 projects that have been completed, nearly $11 million in loans against $14 million in project costs over that span of time for energy efficiency upgrades. The typical things that you would think of: heating and cooling, hot water, building envelope, lighting and appliances, things of that sort. Even solar, but solar has been less prevalent in this portfolio. It's pretty much energy efficiency retrofits, which are good things. So the board has, as shown on the slide, has expanded Lime over the facility for Lime over the years. The last time we did that was last March. We extended it for a 1-year period, and that's up this March of 25. So they've come to us pointing out a pipeline of transactions using about $450,000, hopefully by the end of March of this year, and then they have some other transactions of totally about $750,000 for the balance of 2025, and I think a further $1 million in project value over the next 12 months after that. So they also, although it's not the purpose of this request, they did want to put on our radar screens the fact that a potential use of Green Bank funds for targeting and supporting net zero construction. So these would be new construction or multifamily gut renovation and construction projects to be funded by them in the future. That's not a current permitted use of the Lime facility at this time. So we would have to come, they would have to come back with a process for that. We've started conversations between ourselves and the financing programs team to do that, but that's just at a very nascent stage of discussion. So really the straightforward for today is $1 million extension. I'm sorry, a 1-year extension for the facility.
Any questions? Observations? Okay. Hearing none, so that's resolution 5.
I think we have a question from
oh, wait, yes.
Director for
Oh, hi.
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 Hello.
Sorry, I was a bit late trying to find my raised hand. I wanted to ask about our relationships with the CDFIs. We had some discussions about buying down points for loans with them. Have we moved forward with that at all, or is that just on the back burner?
That's on the back burner right now. I'll have to circle back to you on that.
Okay.
I don't think that was under the Lime that was not under the Lime program. I don't recall that being.
No,
a discussion
no,
about
I
Lime.
wasn't referring to the Lime program, no. It's just that I was in on some conversations having to do with that, so I wondered if there was anything moving forward that would be under consideration.
Not currently, not currently.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody vacuuming? What is that?
No, it's my heater.
Oh my God. I thought you were multitasking again.
No. I probably should, but I'm too lazy for that.
So anymore, so I thought I saw another hand and then it disappeared. Do we have any more questions or observations? Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 5?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Adrian. Do I hear a second?
Second, John Hardy.
Okay, thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, moving on.
Okay, thank you. That completes the investments for today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. So we're moving on to item 6, incentive program. So this is updates and recommendations, and we're going to have Sergio Carilla and Ed Kranish talk about some of the storage facilities and one application that's happening. Who wanted to begin?
Yes.
Sergio?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, Ed Kranich is gonna do this section.
Okay, go in.
All right. Thanks, Sergio, and thank you, Madam Chair. So we wanted to start with an overview of the Energy Storage Solutions Program to provide some background for our newer board members. So the state legislature established an official goal for the state of Connecticut in 2021 to achieve 1,000 megawatts of energy storage by 2030, which includes both behind the meter and front of the meter energy storage. Primarily these days it's in the form of batteries, but it's not necessarily limited to just batteries. So energy storage was created by Pura in 2021. And it was born out of the Greater Equitable Modern Grid framework, which began around 2019 as an effort to improve reliability, reduce emissions, and improve affordability for Connecticut ratepayers, specifically with a goal of improving affordability for low and moderate income households. So energy storage generally helps the grid by improving resiliency for the individual customers who own and operate the batteries. They can use it in an outage. And it can also help reduce peak load, both for individual customers, mainly commercial customers, and also for the whole grid when all batteries are discharged at specific times. So think fill the battery either with solar power, which most batteries are paired with, or cheaper, cleaner grid power at off-peak times, and then deploy it during peak times to avoid using dirty and expensive peaker plants. So this is especially useful in the summertime when we're running our AC units. Since all batteries in this program are able to export power to the grid, they can provide peak reduction benefits that can help all Connecticut ratepayers by reducing those peak loads on the grid for Eversource and UI. So the Connecticut Green Bank, along with Eversource and UI, were named as program administrators of Energy Storage Solutions with a goal of reaching 580 megawatts of approved energy storage capacity by 2030. The program admins coordinated with Pura and energy storage stakeholders, developers, contractors in 2021 to design the program and launch it in January 2022. So originally we designed the program to split capacity evenly between residential and commercial, but as of this past December, we've shifted that split from an even 290 megawatts to a goal of just 150 megawatts on the residential side and a goal of 430 on commercial. The reason for that is that commercial customers install much bigger batteries and they're a lot more motivated to install batteries because they can benefit from demand savings, which can really help improve the financials of installing storage. And residential customers can't benefit from that, at least not right now. So we're continually working to identify and address some improvements to the program to increase enrollment and interest on the residential side. So there are two incentive types where most customers opt to receive both. One is the upfront incentive, which is administered by the Connecticut Green Bank. In the upfront incentive, we provide an upfront discount, which is a discount through the eligible contractor to the owner of the system. And that's in exchange for the customer allowing their battery to be pre-programmed to discharge its energy on a preset schedule in the summer for 10 years. And this is what we call passive dispatch. The other incentive, which customers can receive both, is a performance incentive where the utility pays the customer for what's called active dispatch. And those are basically kind of additional events to help reduce the peak on the grid throughout the summer and a little bit in the winter as well. But today we're just looking at the approval for an upfront incentive for Kinsley Group's project with Allied Printing. So next slide, please. So before we get into the approval for this project, I just wanted to add the reminder here that we're only reserving an incentive today. So no funds are paid by the Green Bank until the project has been installed, interconnected, and proven to be operational and able to receive signals for dispatch in the program. So no incentives are paid out until we know that the system will provide those benefits for 10 years. And there is actually also a clawback where if the system doesn't perform according to our preset schedule during that 10-year, we can actually take back some of that incentive if the system doesn't perform. So also as an incentive program, we review projects to meet the qualifications, but not necessarily on merit. And it is on a first come, first served basis. So we don't give preference to any particular project as long as they meet all the criteria. So with that, we'll get into this project. This project was brought to us by Kinsley Group, who was recently added to the list of eligible developers with the Energy Storage Solutions Program. And their project is with Allied Printing Services in Manchester. It's a family-run business, all local commercial printing on a pretty large building that's grown quite a bit over the years. And interestingly, this doesn't have anything to do with the storage, but they do have a 450 panel array on their roof. So they do have a pretty strong commitment to the environment. So this system it's about 4 megawatts, 14.4 megawatt hours. It's able to meet all the demands of passive and active dispatch. It's able to discharge 80% of its capacity within a 3-hour window in the summer. And total installed cost is about $6.6 million. And the upfront incentive that we have calculated based on all the parameters of this project is $1,310,400. So I'll leave it there for a moment. Sergio, if there's anything else you want to add, or if there's any questions we can address before getting to the resolution.
There, Joe?
I had a question.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you. When you're talking about the upfront incentive, is that how much money they're saving by installing this equipment, or what does that mean exactly?
So the upfront incentive is what the Connecticut Green Bank will pay to the developer, which is an upfront cost reduction to the customer. In this case, the customer is actually purchasing and owning the system themselves. So for them, their net cost is the 6.596 million less the 1.3 million, and then they can go for tax credits and finance the rest on their own. But that upfront incentive is just a one-time buy down of the installed cost.
And then how much will they save on an annual basis by using solar plus battery? Do you know?
So we don't have those figures yet. Those are developed by those come up by the developer. In our own calculation, which is It's developed by Guidehouse. It's kind of our program benefits calculator. I can actually pull up the tear sheet here. We have a number. It's the participant cost test. And let me just grab it here. The participant cost test for this came out to 1.22. So meaning, for every dollar they put in, they get $1.22 of benefits overall, in terms of both demand savings, tax credits, everything kind of bundled in there.
Well, that is great. How many people do they employ? Do you happen to know?
It's a good question as well. They actually did have it on their website, and I had this prepared.
I mean, do you think it's, is it more like 3 or like 30 or 300 or?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. All of the above.
That's a good question. They have, I'm pulling this from their website. They have over 300 actually. So you're right there.
Yeah, that's good.
300 employees, 150 folks that have been there for more than 10 years, and it is a family run and operated business.
Well, when businesses are talking about, and rightfully the cost of electricity is part of the cost of the high cost of doing business in Connecticut, that's like so good that we're saving them money while also eliminating carbon. It's just talking about a win-win, and I would hope that every business in the state would take a look at this. It's just great. This is like a real victory in real time for for renewables. So
absolutely,
good job.
Thank you.
Any other questions, observations? Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 6?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. Adrian speaking.
Thank you, Adrian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Moving on to item 7. So this is environmental infrastructure programs, updates and recommendations. And I think Lee Welton is going to talk to us about a primer.
Yes, the last primer or primer, depending on how you come at the term. Thank you, Chair Reed. The environmental infrastructure team, together with Sarah Harari, James DeSantos, Bert, Eric, Brian, and with support from Corey Lesniak and Stephanie Etruria on the asset management team and Rudy Sturck on the marketing and outreach team, we are really thrilled to share the final primer on waste and recycling in support of the Green Bank's expanded scope and authority as per Public Act 21115. As you've heard me say before, the Act's passage in June of 2021 enabled a new phase of the Green Bank's efforts to carry out our mission, signaling a broadened scope and deepened commitment to environmental infrastructure in addition to our focus on clean energy. The legislation really provided us a framework to innovate and mobilize investments in projects that confront climate change by addressing the urgent need for environmental infrastructure, which is defined in statute as structures, facilities, systems, services, and improvement projects related to water, waste and recycling, which we'll talk about today, climate adaptation and resiliency, agriculture, land conservation, parks and recreation, and environmental markets, including but not limited to carbon offsets and ecosystem services. Over the last 3 years, the Green Bank engaged with stakeholders across environmental infrastructure sectors and produced this series of primers to really better wrap our heads around each sector, its key public policies, the market potential, relevant funding and financing programs, and to talk to stakeholders and identify general opportunities for Green Bank engagement. So we've just finalized this primer, the last primer as part of this set. All of them available on the website if you haven't had a chance to dig in so far. And I'll share that in addition to releasing this primer, our team is already underway with project origination and market engagement. Also, just a housekeeping note, in keeping with a strategic memo of market opportunities that we presented to the board last summer, I'll note that environmental infrastructure is still a new focus for the Green Bank, and we anticipate that strategy and opportunities will continue to evolve as we engage with stakeholders, identify project opportunities, begin to finance initial transactions, and work more closely with capital partners. All right, next slide. So as we began to engage in the waste and recycling sector and to really understand the best opportunity for the Green Bank to take advantage of a lot of our staff capacity and alignment with mission, we came up with a three-pronged strategy to support our focus, and that is support the state, support DEEP's goals for waste management and recycling. Number two, solar PV and battery storage end-of-life considerations. So assess existing technology deployed in solar PV and battery storage programs to identify strategies to reuse, recycle, and dispose of such products. And then number three, expand and scale organic waste management. So really about assessing opportunities to scale up solutions to organic waste management, including those meant to prevent, rescue, and recycle materials. Next slide. In terms of supporting the state, wanted to just set a little bit of the overarching policy context in the state. These policies mostly governed by DEEP as the agency of cognizance and the regulator, and enshrined in a couple of different places, are really about improving municipal recycling programs, reducing waste, and increasing participation in such programs, developing and improving recycling and waste conversion technologies, and encouraging organizations in EPR or extended producer responsibility obligations, with some specific policy goals, but I'll just give the punchline, which is the overarching policy goal is to divert 60% of municipal solid waste by 2024, which we are a far way off from. I think total at the moment, if you include all recycling, including organics, is about 35%. You'll also note under policy goals, a specific target meant to achieve the diversion of at least 300,000 tons of organic waste annually. Go back a slide, sorry. So the thing to comment on here is that the closure of the Mira facility reduced the state's waste processing capacity by nearly a third. So if you imagine the state's ability to manage and dispose of our municipal solid waste, losing a third of our in-state processing capacity took a system that was already really stretched and has made it an even more dire situation for what we do to manage our waste. So the legislature, following the Mira flameout in 2022, created the Mira Dissolution Authority, which our very own Bert Hunter chairs, tasked with helping to figure out what to do. I'll say in terms of our support the state objective, the regulatory landscape here is really crucial to achieving the state's diversion goals, especially given this heightened constraint for disposal capacity and the impact that it has on greenhouse gas emissions, environmental quality concerns, and equity considerations. So we really are in favor of seeing properly enforced state policy as a way to help unlock private capital and to animate markets, encouraging whether innovation waste technologies, robust recycling and composting infrastructure, and the implementation of food diversion programs at municipal, commercial, regional levels. So we are committed, first and foremost, to supporting state policy conducive to delivering the 60% diversion goal, as well as other initiatives that can help to remedy the deficiency that we have in the state for managing our own municipal solid waste. And given the nascent extent of waste stream circularity and a very limited current network of organic waste infrastructure, we do think that legislation and enforcement are critical components of the solution at scale. So that sums up our support the state objective. We'll move on. As far as solar PV and battery storage end-of-life considerations, thanks to the efforts of many on this call, Connecticut has been hugely successful in deploying solar and storage. As the first few of these panels start to come down, we're beginning to think more holistically, whether for programs the Green Bank has administered or those externally, about end-of-life considerations. As part of this broader conversation, this comes out of a Pura Storage Program docket, which directed the Green Bank to run a working group. We included in that working group representations from utilities agencies, participants in the RES and RCIP programs, and other program participants, really relying on that group to crowdsource insight from across that committee and with the support of consultant Power Advisory. So on this slide, I'll just quickly explain the context and some high-level takeaways. The number one takeaway on the left here is that solar and storage systems currently represent a small fraction of the overall waste stream today, but their volumes are projected to grow significantly as installations mature. So you can think about this in the words of Sarah Harari as the problem is kind of not yet. And then on the right side, the high-level takeaway here is that the solutions are also not here yet. So facilities that can do material reclamation are currently far away. And so there are a number of market constraints and some logistics considerations for trying to get at the comparative cost differential, which is quite large in the difference between something like a solar PV system being landfilled versus that system being recycled. All right. So in terms of next steps, from the Green Bank perspective, there are three approaches that Sarah Power Advisory and the working group came to in kind of thinking about how this affects us in terms of next steps, how this fits within the context of the environmental infrastructure scope expansion for the Green Bank, and then more broadly for the state. So from the Green Bank perspective, it's really about continuing to support the asset management team as they explore and learn more about end-of-life options and opportunities for management. That could be extending the life of these technologies, considering new technologies or otherwise. For example, repairing systems and redeploying. So those are for some of the assets that the Green Bank has deployed and continues to own and manage. And then for broader EI scope expansion, so part of our statutory authority is for waste and recycling more broadly. So as we think about the solar and storage sector as having deployed a lot of distributed energy resources, to think about what the net impact of those materials might be as a contribution to Connecticut's waste streams in the future, and helping to be responsible stewards in how we consider the types of investments that we may be needing to make, perhaps regionally, perhaps more locally in the state, to help build out that infrastructure in anticipation of the systems coming offline in the future. Might take a field trip. That has been suggested as a way that we can learn a little bit more about the existing technology and solution providers for recycling and reclamation of materials. And then for the state of Connecticut, still a big question. As we understand it from some of the learnings of the working group, and you would have seen this in the state's policy goals, extended producer responsibility is something the state wants to see more of. It may not make sense in solar markets. We're still learning, and we're still supporting some of those broader learnings across the state about how the efficient market outcome would need to be supported in local or regional policy and infrastructure build out. So stay tuned for more on this one. And it's certainly a lot more context than I can speak to from that working group process contained within the primer. As far as expanding and scaling organic waste management, so first, just to tell you from a high level, Connecticut's waste composition, we have that 60% diversion target. We are not there yet. Approximately 40% of total Connecticut municipal solid waste is comprised of compostables. That's a bit of an academic exercise. Not all of those materials are recoverable, but certainly considering that only 9%, a little bit above, of organic material is currently diverted and recycled, there's certainly a big delta there in terms of an opportunity for engaging on organics. And you'll see here that though DEEP is currently working on an update to the waste composition study by July 2026, we understand that approximately 22% of the state's waste is food scraps alone. All right, let's keep blasting through. Why does this matter? So just to sensitize you all a little bit to this context, as an entity committed to greenhouse gas emissions reductions, food waste alone, so food that is wasted, accounts for 6% of total U.S. Greenhouse gas emissions, including 60% of methane from landfill. Also, if you look over here in the table, you'll see where Connecticut's waste goes. And as a native Ohioan, I'll tell you that Sunny Farms landfill, Connecticut trucks almost 200,000 tons of our waste to Sunny Farms landfill at a distance of 652 miles. So we're causing a lot of congestion on the roads and a lot of emissions from trucks and trains, I should say, getting to Ohio with our waste. Water impact, this was a surprising one for our team. 21% of U.S. freshwater use goes to food that ends up currently in the landfill, plus leachate issues into groundwater supplies. And then obviously this fits in the broader context of food insecurity in the state and the disproportionate impact faced by environmental justice communities with the impacts from waste management and the siting of such facilities. Next slide. So the EPA has a hierarchy that helps us understand what the ideal solutions are. And we are students of this throughout the primer in really understanding where the greatest bang for the buck comes in various solutions across the scale. That is also codified and better understood in this scale at the bottom, which is from the nonprofit food waste national organization ReFed, which conducted a roadmap to 2030 through an interagency agreement between USDA, EPA, and the FDA. And you'll see that this is bucketed as strategies that can help address the prevention of, the rescue of, and then the recycling of organic materials. And throughout the primer process and with our market engagement, we really learned a lot about the market dynamics, including that for various reasons that we don't have time to get into today, a number of the organic waste processing facilities in the state are currently not operating at capacity. It is a regional waste economy, so facilities in Connecticut process waste from other states, as well as sending our waste out of state. So, we do need to think about this as a regional approach. You do have commercial organics law, which is mandatory for industrial, commercial, and institutional properties in the state, which generate over 26 tons of organic materials a year. It's one of the best laws in the country on commercial organics. However, there is low compliance and no enforcement. So we're dealing in those dynamics as well. I'll just also say, in terms of the barriers that we'll be looking to really consider, high transit costs, siting and permitting, limited grants and incentives, the availability and quality of feedstock, or the different actual types of materials needing to be processed or being sent for processing. So based on our stakeholder conversations and with others, we feel like we have attained a working understanding of the organic waste market dynamics, and that leads us to the next slide. So just to, I would say, give a high-level look at where some of our origination activities are now headed, the potential investment opportunities. We are conforming to the ReFed interagency agreement represented prevention, rescue, and recycling spectrum. So thinking about the ways that you can prevent food from becoming wasted in the first place, that can be reducing harvest losses in various capacities, that can be in capacity expansion for upcycling of defect produce. There have been a number of business models that have sprung up across the country in order to do that. You may have heard of some like Imperfect Produce or others. One, rescue. So as the network for food rescue organizations in the state continues to really be in service to community dynamics and a growing dependency in some cases, thinking about what working capital support there may be for helping those facilities build out. So you could imagine if there was a facility that needed to be constructed to support food rescue operations, there could be some kind of a construction loan and thinking about opportunities to engage there. And then a broad spectrum of recycling from logistics, collection, pre-processing, and processing infrastructure. Next slide. And then just in the context of the Green Bank, I hope you're all familiar and can recall that this isn't our first rodeo, so to speak. So you may recall the prior investments that have really given us some initial transaction experience in the space, whether with Quantum Organics, which is a food waste to energy anaerobic digestion project, or next slide, Agrid Fort Hill Farm, which was a farm waste to energy anaerobic digestion project. So I'll wrap it up there just to say that we feel very grounded in the market dynamics and in a vetted understanding of how to support origination activities to have the greatest potential impact for community benefit, for greenhouse gas emissions reductions, water use, a number of impacts along with jobs, economic development, et cetera. And so we are now underway in really thinking about how to use Green Bank strengths and priorities in support of our efforts. We look forward to keeping you apprised on our progress as we expand further in this direction, and will now welcome your questions and comments.
Questions, anybody? Comment? Oh, wait, I see there's a hand. Whose hand is that?
It's John, I believe.
Oh, Sean, okay.
Yeah, so you're saying that we're both shipping waste out and bringing waste in from other states, is that right?
Yes, that has to do a bit with the dynamic of municipal waste often going out, and often you can think of certain manufacturing entities who take, for example, a bakery, a commercial bakery that's looking for existing processing infrastructure to be an off-taker of what is wasted at their facility. So there's a lot of nuance to get into and how to understand feedstock, if you will, because municipal feedstock, basically residentially or small business and restaurant derived feedstock, is a very different set of considerations and market dynamics than commercial offtake.
But we're not, I know this sounds a little ridiculous, but that's why it might be actually happening. We're not shipping out waste that's been shipped in, are we?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe
and then
so.
the other comment I'd have is on, I think the first slide that you, there was a note about justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I was glad to see that. And I would hope in general that the Green Bank is not backing away from those principles, even in light of the current climate that seems to be dismissing those values. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Is there a question from Kimberly? I'm seeing another hand raised.
Thanks. Slide 37, I believe.
Kimberly?
Yeah, can you hear me?
A little bit.
Yeah. Lean in.
How about now?
There you
A
go.
little better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Back on slide, where'd it go? 37. I was interested in a staggering stat there. Wasted food accounts for 21% of U.S. freshwater use. How is that? What does that exactly mean? I'm not sure I understand that.
So you can imagine all of the resources that go to grow food for human consumption, but then is not actually consumed and is eventually sent to landfill. So it just has to do with the kind of aggregate amount of U.S. freshwater resources consumed on an annual basis for various purposes, in this case, to grow food, and then understanding how much of that food does eventually end up, in the bin.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Okay. just a tiny little task you've been tackling.
Well, a very grounded group effort. So we look forward to continuing to keep folks apprised as we continue on, whether it's figuring out how to be impactful with solar PV and battery storage, end of life considerations, or more actively with origination for organic waste management solutions. And we do have, this is not a hypothetical, we do hope in the next couple of months to be bringing you our first transaction related to organic waste management.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for all that work. Oh man, that's quite, we've been dealing with that for years and years, and we haven't even begun to get there yet. So okay. Item 8 is we're going to deal with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund and investment policy. And I think Brian Farnan and Stephanie are going to talk to us about that.
Yeah, hi, good
Bert,
morning,
too.
everyone.
Good morning.
So this agenda item pertains to the Green Bank's sub-award under the Coalition for Green Capital Selected National Clean Investment Fund. And we have a separate agenda, or separate time on the agenda this morning to provide, a broader update based on recent activities, but wanted to take time in the board meeting today as part of our kind of normal course of implementation. Our team has been working on developing our own investment policy modeled after CGC's investment policy that, if approved by the board and then presented and approved by CGC, would apply solely to our projects supported by federal National Clean Investment Fund funds. So again, the green banks, just to provide some context for kind of why this is coming forward to you now, our sub-award agreement with CGC, again, has CGC as part of its own course of business has established an overarching investment policy for its NCIF investments. There's a section in there that pertains to subrecipients. So our sub-award agreement with CGC, references that we must be complying unless and until we submit our own investment policy, kind of more tailored to our size and scope and financing programs. So that's what we have drafted here and have attached in the board materials. Just one other thing to note, and then I'll pause to see if there are questions, is that this pertains to, as you may remember, the portion of the NCIF funds that Connecticut received was not only for projects based in Connecticut, but also a portion allocated to the Puerto Rico Green Energy Trust, as well as New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. So just want to be clear that the investment policy pertains to our scope, and that Puerto Rico and New Hampshire would either need to comply with CGC's investment policy or otherwise develop their own. So that's the kind of context that we're operating with today. So I think that's all I had in terms of background. We can go to the resolution and see if there are any questions.
Are there any questions?
Next slide, please. Thanks.
Okay, not seeing any questions or observations, concerns. Brian, did you want to say anything?
Just that this is a mandatory requirement to have this investment policy in place. We've got a great finance team through Bert and the team, and this is one of those things that that we need to provide over to when that funding eventually does become available, which I think is our next item.
Yeah, exactly. So do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 7?
So moved, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Do we hear a second?
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. And I think we're whoa. That sounded
Sorry
like
about
a UFO. So I think we need to go into executive session to discuss the next thing. And I would love to request an executive session.
Great. Yeah, we're proposing going into executive session to discuss confidential matters related to strategy and negotiations with respect to pending claims or litigation. What I will do technically, let's see if we can have a motion for the board to approve going into executive session. Then I will manage all the logistical things on who's in. But if we could just make sure the Green Bank staff, Brian, Stephanie, Sarah, Bert, Eric are present, that would be great. But we'll follow on the resolution from the board to go into executive session.
I'll make the motion to go into executive session for strategy and negotiations with respect to pending claims and litigation. This is Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Second.
Nice. That was nice. Thanks, John. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Anybody abstaining?
No, but
Okay.
I didn't register my eye, so I register my eye. There you go.
There you go. Okay. Let's go into executive session.
Excellent. And we can go to
We are back on.
So resolution 8, do I hear a motion to approve resolution 8?
Madam Chair, so moved, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Do I hear a second?
I'll second Adrian.
Thank you, Adrian. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Thank you, everybody. And do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, I heard a second in there as well. Have a wonderful weekend, and again, happy spring, and I think we're in a good place. Okay. We are
Thanks,
now
everyone.
adjourned.
All right. Take
Thank
care,
you.
folks.
Okay, thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.